Relatives of a Border Patrol agent murdered by a Mexican national in 2014 testify in what's becoming an emotional sentencing. Our border reporter Oscar Morgaine has been following the case down in Brownsville as it comes to a dramatic conclusion.
The state called on 5 members of the Vega family to take the stand in an effort to show the jury the emotional damage the now convicted murderer has caused them.
I wish it would have been me.
Emotions running high during the second day of the sentencing phase
I wish it would have been me.
in the trial of Gustavo Tijerina Sandoval, an undocumented Mexican found guilty Wednesday of killing an off-duty Border Patrol agent in front of his family.
He's not going to be there for any of their adult life. He's never going to be there again.
One after the other, members of the Vega family share their struggles of coping with the shooting death of Javier Vega Jr. the evening of August 3, 2014. Vega Jr.'s father pleading to the jury to sentence his son's killer with a maximum punishment.
I think they should give me, be honest with you, a knife on that.
Marie Vega, present during the deadly robbery attempt while the family was out fishing, recalled some of her most cherished moments with her son.
Someone like Gustavo Tijerina Sandoval just show up and think he's entitled to whatever you have with no respect for human life.
And with that, the state rested its case. One last witness is expected to testify for the defense on Monday, then closing arguments. It is after that that the jury will decide whether to send Tijerina to life in prison or death row. In Brownsville, on the Texas-Mexico border, I'm Oscar Morgaine reporting.